And tonight on the Daily Wrap, 24 hours after Kentucky clerk Kim Davis is released from jail, the debate over religious freedom versus the law of the land is in full swing. We'll be talking to one of the drafters of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and Hillary Clinton is sorry, maybe, sort of. We'll sort of sort out Mrs. Clinton's apology for you. And is Donald Trump finally becoming a politician? This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host Rick Unger. I'm thinking we should do Donald Trump. We haven't done him in 24 hours.
Yeah, well, we don't get to talk about Trump enough, do we?
That's true.
Look, I got to tell you something. He is really starting to get my attention. And I have not been a Trump supporter, and I doubt that, I've had to talk about him, but that doesn't mean I've been impressed by him. He's doing something fascinating now. His position on the Syrian refugees absolutely shocked me. He's starting to take opinions now and positions that are contrary to the Republican base, clearly going after the independent-minded voters out there, and I think that is stunningly smart.
And taxing the rich as well, people like you. So you're actually maybe supporting somebody who's taking money out of your pocket.
Well, they all take money out of my pocket. What's the difference?
Good point. Okay. And to his right, Mr. Unger's right, he's a Newsmax TV contributor and a writer for National Review Online. John Fund joins us once again. And finally, he's the assistant online editor for Commentary Magazine. Must be Wednesday. Noah Rothman is in seat number 3. Welcome, sir. And finally, it's time for the Daily Download. Let's get right to it. In the wake of the jailing and subsequent release of Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis, some politicians, including in the wake of the jailing and subsequent, well, you know what we're trying to say here, are calling for laws that protect people of faith.
We need to have accommodations here for people of faith. There are laws in place right now called Religious Freedom Restoration Acts. Do they cover this specific situation? No, they don't. That's why I called for, as soon as this law passed, for the president to issue an executive order that lines up with something called the First Amendment Defense Act, which allows for governmental officials who have conscience issues with this to be able to have some ability to...
So she should step aside and let a deputy do this one. That would work?
There should be some accommodation made for people of faith.
Okay, so Santorum's reaction, not terribly surprising, but Donald Trump's is. And yesterday he told MSNBC's Joe Scarborough that he believes Kim Davis needs to follow the law.
Let me ask you about that Kentucky court clerk. You were asked about it at your appearance yesterday and said you hadn't had time to look into it. So now what do you think?
Well, look, the decision came down from the Supreme Court, Gene, so I'm a believer on both sides of the picture. I would say the simple answer is let her clerks do it. Now, from what I understand, she's not letting her clerks do it either.
But Donald, bottom line is, though, the Supreme Court makes a decision. That's the law of the land, right?
You have to go with it. I mean, you have to go with it. The decision's been made, and that is the law of the land.
I think Joe's borrowing some of Mika's blonde dye at this point. You see that nice little... No, I like it. I like it. Anyway, to discuss this further, we are joined by constitutional lawyer Mike Farris, who is a senior fellow for constitutional studies at Citizens for Self-Governance and the head of a Convention of States project, as well as an original co-author of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. I believe he is qualified. Okay, Mike, so conservatives seem to be split on Kim Davis. As you heard, Rick Santorum calling for laws to protect the religious freedoms of state and federal employees. Donald Trump says, hey, law of the land, do your job. What do you think?
I agree with Rick Santorum, basically, that there is a way to find an accommodation for people like Kim Davis. It's not a question of whether or not these people are going to get their licenses. The question is whether she can be personally coerced to participate. And being a government official, it's a really fine line. The individual rights of a government official are different than an individual citizen. But the general principle of religious freedom is if we can find a way to accommodate religious belief, we have a duty to do so. And I think we could find a way to accommodate this lady and still people could get their license in compliance with the Supreme Court's decision, which I believe, by the way, was unconstitutional to begin with, but nonetheless, they could get their license some other way.
Hey, Mike, it's Rick Unger. I'm curious about your take on whether or not Title VII of the Civil Rights Act is applicable to an elected official. Certainly, if she were employed by a private employer, the law requires her employer to take, some kind of steps to try and alleviate the problem for her, as long as it's not too overbearing on the business. Does this apply when it's an elected official who has held up her right hand and sworn to uphold the law, no matter when that law becomes the law?
Well, the government has a duty to make sure that their employees don't have their religious freedom violated as well. You can't coerce religious activity by a bureaucrat at the Department of Commerce, for example.
But do you have to ameliorate the situation? I mean, isn't that the issue here? Whether or not we have some, or Kentucky or whoever has an obligation to ameliorate her situation that's come to exist, or the other possibility, which is if it no longer suits her to do that job because of her religious convictions, her choice is to resign the job.
Well, of course, that's one choice, and several clerks across the country have taken that choice. I think it's unfortunate they've been coerced into that position. But the central principle of the Free Exercise Clause is you can't coerce people to violate their religious beliefs. And if you take that and add to it the right of religious people to hold elected office in this country, a principle that is upheld by the Supreme Court in McDaniel versus Patty, when ministers were barred from participating in the state constitutional convention. You add those two things together, and I think the federal courts have a duty here to follow the principle of free exercise, which I think that RFRA is more applicable than people might think. There is a duty to find the least restrictive alternative here, and I think there are alternatives that would accomplish the court's objective without coercing this woman. Coercion is a really high value in the First Amendment, and what we're seeing here is coercion.
Mike, Noah Rothman with Commentary Magazine. You said earlier you agree with Rick Santorum that perhaps the president or maybe Governor Beshear would issue an executive order that would allow for her there be some special dispensation for Kim Davis and others like her who don't want to have their religious beliefs violated. Is there a limiting principle there? How do we define religious beliefs, and is that applicable to just about any circumstance? For example, somebody who wants to smoke marijuana as a part of their religious belief, or a Jewish individual who doesn't want to perform certain rituals in a hospital. Do we define, is there a limiting way to define what a special religious dispensation would be in an executive action?
Well, first of all, I was agreeing with Rick Santorum relative to the ultimate objective of finding an alternative. I don't necessarily think it's proper to do it through an executive order, but let's just deal with the substance rather than the means of getting there. And the limiting principle is the principle in RFRA. And first of all, there has to be a substantial burden on this woman, and that's clear. She's been in jail for following her religious belief. That gets you over the substantial burden test. And then the next question is there a compelling governmental interest in forcing her to give the license? Not a compelling governmental interest in the license being issued, but in forcing her to do it. I can't see a compelling interest in forcing a particular individual to issue the license. And then the last principle is there a least restrictive alternative? But and
Mike, aren't
yes,
you?
Go ahead.
The one thing that concerns me, and we have about 30 seconds, is that yes, we can do something to work out the situation for Ms. Davis, but in doing that, aren't you creating a precedent that could wreak absolute havoc on elected officials all over the country?
I don't think so, because this is the standard. RFRA, what it did was to take 100 years of free exercise law and distill it down into recognizable principles. And we have not had a runaway abusive situation for religious freedom when we follow those principles before the Smith decision or afterwards in RFRA. There's limiting principles and they work. And so 100 years of litigation says these principles don't lead to bizarre and absurd results. I think we can follow them and follow them safely.
Mike Farris, head of the Convention of States Project. Thanks for coming on tonight from Virginia. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Mike's an interesting guy.
Yeah, I didn't expect that answer.
Knows his stuff.
I thought he'd, I like the fact that he's looking for some sort of compromise here instead of taking one position extreme that isn't something that's necessarily pragmatic.
The compromise worries me for the reason that I raised, but I appreciate what he's trying to do.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, you can share your thoughts on Kim Davis and religious freedom rights by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Maybe we'll read your comment on the air later in the show. Coming up next, Hillary Clinton is sorry about her email server. Maybe. Stick around.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Hillary Clinton continues to slide in the polls as Americans become less and less trusting of the former Secretary of State. In the latest national poll produced by Monmouth University, the former Secretary of State has dropped 10 points in 1 month, down to 42%. Vice President Joe Biden, in the meantime, has jumped up 10 points to 22%, while Senator Sanders has risen to 20%. All the other candidates claim less than 1% of the vote, while 10% of Democratic voters are undecided. Obviously feeling the heat, Clinton is trying to clean up her image, especially around the email scandal. Last night, she joined ABC for an exclusive interview.
When voters were asked, what is the first word that comes to mind when you think of Hillary Clinton? Words like liar, dishonest, untrustworthy were at the top of the list. Does this tell you that your original explanation about the private server, that you did it to carry one phone out of convenience, that this didn't sit well with the American people?
Obviously, ABC's David Muir, who conducted the interview, was holding nothing back.
Well, David, obviously, I don't like hearing that. I am confident by the end of this campaign, people will know they can trust me and that I will be on their side and will fight for them and their families. But I do think I could have and should have done a better job answering questions earlier. I really didn't perhaps appreciate the need to do that. What I had done was allowed. It was above board.
Well, Mrs. Clinton says she was behaving above board, but there certainly seems to be a number of people out there who are questioning that, so we continue.
In retrospect, certainly, as I look back at it now, even though it was allowed, I should have used 2 accounts, one for personal, one for work-related emails. That was a mistake. I'm sorry about that. I take responsibility.
So John Fund, she apologized. All good now? All is forgiven? Come home, Hillary?
When she said it was allowed, it's because the Secretary of State, her, allowed it. That's really a dodge.
Well, not really.
Yes,
not
really.
Because
the State Department has clear guidelines which apply to every employee, including the Secretary of State, and she violated all of them. As for the apology, the New York Times reported today, they dragged it out of her, staff dragged it out of her after they showed her focus group after focus group in which people said, she has no remorse, we're not voting for her. So that's how sincere the apology is. I will tell you, it took Hillary Clinton 10 years after her vote for the war in Iraq in 2002. It took her 10 years to finally say I was wrong. Now we've gone down to 20 weeks where she finally admits something wrong, but only when her political career is at stake.
Noah, I'm going to ask you a question I've been asking a lot the past 2 days. Let's pretend it wasn't Hillary Clinton running for the presidency, it was Bill Clinton. And he found himself in the identical situation with these emails. How would he have handled it?
Well, that's a good question. If we knew anything about Bill Clinton, it's that he would probably dissemble and that he would mislead. And that
charmingly,
adorably, to the point. But he would actually have people behind him because he is a deft politician. He is nimble on his feet. He's good at retail politics, and he projects sincerity. All of the things that Hillary Clinton fails to do on a routine basis. Hillary Clinton has suggested that her behavior was all above board, but the FBI doesn't investigate things that are all above board, nor does the FBI investigate servers. They investigate individuals who are alleged to have conducted misconduct.
The FBI, the key word there is investigates. They investigate allegations that something might not be above board.
And those involve individuals.
So, yeah, but that's still allegations. We have to be careful about that. It doesn't mean that it wasn't above board.
If you were to read a story about this investigation, you will see the routine disclaimer that Hillary Clinton is not a target of this investigation.
Yeah,
it is absolute nonsense.
It is. I agree, but that's not my point.
Please understand, 3 intelligence entities have all concluded highly classified information was sent through her server. She did receive it. That is a fact. That is not an allegation. That is an actual fact, and that is against every regulation the government has.
Why isn't she indicted yet?
Oh, come now. This will take months.
I understand.
Indictments don't happen overnight.
But let's answer.
Petraeus, that happened pretty quickly from what I understand.
I want to answer the Bill Clinton question. Here's the answer to the Bill Clinton question, and it plays into what both of you said. If it was Bill Clinton, the great explainer, What he would have said is, look, let me tell you how government works. Different agencies, different departments have different points of view on what should be classified. So none of these things were stamped classified. They came in after. They're still fighting over it. These last 2 emails that are supposedly so damning, you've got a disagreement going on there. The State Department says no. One of them
You just
was
said a
not
statement
even
that's
in the
you just said a
classified
statement that's in doubt. The notion that
North-
these things didn't originate
No.
classified. I see disagree.
Wait, look, when it says North Korean nuclear secrets in the
They
message,
say it wasn't classified. They say it was on the
no,
non-classified
it
server.
was, it was.
All right, I got to move on. David Muir asked Clinton about 2 emails that were found on her server that the intelligence community, that's what we were just talking about, Inspector General confirmed were top secret when created and remained classified now.
Well, there is still, as you know, a dispute. The State Department disputes that. I understand why different agencies have different views, and I respect that. It does not change the fact that I did not send or receive any information that was marked classified at the time.
All right, so you guys are taking a position, and by the way, I read all the same reports and data you do. You're taking a position that you know, or at least you have, John, that one of these at least was marked classified. And yet she's saying...
That's what my sources have
And
confirmed.
my sources have said something exactly the opposite. Seriously.
I don't have sources. I read the reports, and the reports have said that these were marked originated classified at the time. That's what the IC says. That's what the Inspector
I've
General
heard that they
says.
were marked classified after.
That's what the Inspector General has suggested.
If her staff removed the classified headings, that does not absolve
If
her.
that happened, you're right.
If it
I
does, that
agree.
does not absolve her.
All right,
and that's the best case
We
she
got to
has.
leave it. We can do this for the next week, and we probably will. Are you taking Mrs. Clinton's apology seriously? Some of the folks on the panel are not. Do you think she can come back from this? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments to let us know. And we want to know who your pick is for the 2016 nomination. Go to newsmaxpolls.com. Let us know. Coming up, is Trump finally a politician?
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Presidential hopeful, his name is Donald Trump, continues to make good with Fox News. Last night he joined Bill O'Reilly to discuss a plethora of issues. Bill's first question, the migrant crisis in Europe.
It's a serious problem. We haven't seen anything like it since the Second World War, and it's getting worse and worse. And I was actually impressed in one way, but surprised that Merkel in Germany allowed this to happen, because they're really flowing through all over Europe. And if you notice, Russia's not taking and China's not taking. I wonder, you know, where all these people are coming from exactly, and what are they representing? Because do you have people from ISIS in that group? You know, there's a lot of security risk with it.
It's amazing. He has this red tie thing every time. It's like Bibi Netanyahu only wears a blue tie. He only wears a red tie. I've never seen another tie in this
Trump
man.
image, man.
Yes. Next, O'Reilly brought up migrants coming to the United States.
Do you object to migrants who are getting out of the Middle East and North Africa? Do you object to them coming to the USA?
I hate the concept of it, but on a humanitarian basis with what's happening, you have to. You know, this was started by President Obama when he didn't go in and do the job when he should have, when he drew the line in the sand, which turned out to be a very artificial line. But, you know, it's living in hell in Syria.
Seventh circle of hell. Okay, John Fund. Mr. Trump would bring in migrants, or at least he would accept them in the United States, given his stance on immigration. Are you surprised by this?
No. He never said how many. He never said when. And he never said he was going to change his mind next week.
But he also never
It's the same old Donald Trump.
I'll take
there
it
are
in.
no specifics,
He
ever.
he also never
Or
mentioned that
Argentines.
some of them could theoretically be terrorists.
But he hates the concept.
Although in
which
reality
means
they probably wouldn't.
depends how
because
much he
they're-
hates the concept.
They're mostly Syrian middle class, and not too many middle class tend to fall into the terrorist category.
True. Noah?
Well, I guess this is somewhat surprising, because I expected him to backtrack when he found out that he was to the right, or to the left, I suppose, of some of his competitors in the nomination race. He's actually not far off base as far as policy goes here. The United States takes in about 70,000 refugees per year. We've taken about 5,000 from Syria. A lot of these migrants are from Syria, but not all of them. Quite a bit of them are from Eritrea, and they're escaping poverty and authoritarianism. We're facing a migration crisis now that has to do with the whole region. It's not just Syria, and we have a vetting process. process here. So if he actually researches this,
not a very effective one, unfortunately.
No, not at all. But we do this, and we do it rather effectively. We've been doing it since World War II. So this is not something that we're unfamiliar with.
Okay, please come prepared to the show.
There was one thing though that nobody seems to be paying attention to because they were so surprised by what he said. Listen, we can all blame Obama for his red line that he didn't follow, and people have some great arguments as to why he was wrong, why he was right. But that's not the reason that this happened. This started in big numbers long before the red line situation. This is the result of the Civil War. Has nothing to do with the red line. So, you know, he takes a step forward and then he completely misstates history. And the realities, and that doesn't impress me when it comes to knowledge of foreign policy.
Rick, you're going to make us defend Donald Trump.
Yes, Donald was then asked about.
Because of that. It really
move on.
The red line was set less than a year after the Civil War started.
No, I understand, but that his failure to follow through on it was not what caused this.
It certainly didn't help the situation. Can we agree on that?
It didn't have an impact on the situation.
I think it did. Okay, Donald was then asked about BLM, Black Lives Matter.
I think they're trouble. I think they're looking for trouble. I looked at a couple of the people that were interviewed from the group. I saw them with hate coming down the street last week talking about cops and police and what should be done to them, and that was not good. And I think it's a disgrace that they're getting away with it. I think it's disgraceful the way they're being catered to by the Democrats, and it's going to end up kicking them you know where. I don't think it's going to end up good. The fact is all lives matter. That includes black, and it includes white, and it includes everybody else.
Can't wait to see Black Lives Matter at the next Trump event. That will be an interesting confrontation. Be like Jorge Ramos times, 1,000.
And he'll have security guards there.
True.
He does have the.
I do want to touch on something real quick. You said at the top of the show that Trump is surprising you in a positive way. Does that include the fact that he wants to tax the rich? And obviously the migrant situation. Do you think he's going to the center?
Yes.
Is he going
that.
anywhere?
He set aside the actual positions, okay? And that maybe I like them.
They will change.
Maybe, well, they will change. But what he's doing, it's like he's figured out that he can't become president with the right-wing base. He can't. But if you start expanding that out to the independents, that can have a really serious impact. I think what's happening is Trump is starting to realize, hey, I actually could win this nomination, and he's starting to become a politician, as we said earlier.
There is some strategy there, no question about it. The question is, if he starts going to the left on some of these issues, or at least to the center, does he risk losing those people that support him from the right? He'll just change back.
That's on the audience, right?
Look, he's a genius at this. I just wish he were more consistent.
Okay. Well, do you think Donald Trump can sustain his momentum and win the nomination? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. And be sure to get your copy of Ben Carson's book, One Nation. It's absolutely free. All you have to do is pay the $4.95 to cover the cost of shipping. Call 1-800-655-7567, 1-800-655-7567, or visit newsmax.com/Ben right now. Up next, we have the latest on the Iran deal. Please stay tuned.
Never, ever, ever in my life have I seen any transaction so incompetently negotiated as our deal with Iran. And I mean never. Our president is calling the person who is really the boss in Iran supreme leader. And we are led by very, very stupid people. Very, very stupid people. We cannot let it continue.
That, of course, was GOP frontrunner Donald Trump speaking at a protest staged by Mr. Trump and fellow presidential candidate Ted Cruz today on Capitol Hill. The event was designed to speak out against the Iran nuclear deal and comes on the day that House Republicans were scheduled to vote on a resolution to disapprove the agreement, a vote now delayed as the House assesses what will happen in the Senate now that there are 41 Democrats available to sustain a filibuster against such a resolution of disapproval in that body. Some conservative members of Congress argue that there is no point to passing a resolution of disapproval when they know that it will only fail in the Senate, and they would prefer to pass legislation requiring that the president comply with the bill passed earlier by the House, which requires the president to reveal all aspects of the nuclear agreement. Does it make any sense that the House battle goes on when we know that nothing it passes will get through the Senate? John Fund.
This is such a bad deal, Rick. I think anything that goes on the record demonstrating how perfidious this was is probably a good thing, because we're going to have to revisit this in a year and a half with a new president, I think regardless of which party, and it's probably a good idea for Congress to put all of this on the record, so frankly
Except
a bunch
that
of people can say I told you so.
It's not going to go on the record. Were they to pass a
No,
resolution
I'm talking about
of disapproval?
This is really about laying down the facts.
This is really about politics.
No, it's laying down the facts.
Noah?
Democrats, from Jim Woolsey to Ben Cardin of Maryland to Chuck Schumer and a whole range of Democrats, that's not politics.
And Republicans like Senator Lugar, who just told me he very much favors the deal.
What every single Republican in the Senate who currently has access to the intelligent briefings that Senator Lugar does not have access to opposes the deal. That tells you something.
Okay, Noah, you're up.
I completely agree with John. There's some argument about whether or not a disapproval resolution would trigger some elements of the Corker-Cardin legislation that would result in a lot of politics, again, of disagreement over whether or not this deal can be implemented. But ultimately, it falls on the executive, and it will be implemented. So there is something of a political debate. But all of this is very complicated. What we saw on the steps of the Capitol today was something very simple, which was blame Republican leadership for the implementation of this deal, which is ultimately very self-serving, misleading, and I think it directs conservatives towards the wrong culprit here. You could be speaking in a uniform voice against this deal and addressing it towards the president, but they're not. They're trying to advance their political careers.
And let me just add one thing. Some of the opposition to this deal is pretty opportunistic. Donald Trump gave voice to a lot of frustration people have with this deal, and then typically he went over the top. He actually said, and I took notes, he actually said, the 4 prisoners the American prisoners in Iran that were not part of this deal, we will get them back. In fact, I guarantee, he said it twice, I guarantee, if I'm elected president, they will be returned before I'm sworn in. Now, I have to tell you, I know Donald Trump is the art of braggadocio, as well as the deal. But this is so over the top, you have to ask yourself, is this a serious, well, I know he's not a serious person, but can't he pretend to be a serious
The art of
candidate?
grandstanding. You know what it reminds me of, before you get to your question? When Reagan, right before he was inaugurated, then we were able to get the hostages home.
Yeah, amazing how that happened.
Right,
That's
so
where
I
he
think
borrowed
that's
this.
what he's trying to, of course.
But to guarantee it,
that's a little dangerous.
He's effectively
Although I gotta
guaranteeing
tell you,
war.
I actually,
More or less,
well,
yes.
no, I agree with him that it's going to happen, but for a very different reason. I look at this and I see the Cuban Missile Crisis resolution, where we agreed quietly, off the record, off the public record, that we would take the
missiles out of
it's a
Turkey.
good thing they did, or you and I wouldn't be sitting here to
caved.
take the missiles out of Turkey 4 months after the deal, which is what they did. No harm, no foul. Same thing's going to happen
I don't think
here.
you can do that in the internet age, though.
I think you can, and I think you will.
Bobby Kennedy made that deal, by the way.
Yes, he did. Does it trouble you at all that, look, I can see both sides of this deal. I hear John Fund. I understand what's troubling him about the deal, and it makes sense. I hear people arguing for the deal. I hear the elements that make sense in that direction. Does it make you nervous when anybody, whether they're for it or against it, takes a strong stand when you can't possibly know how this is going to turn out for a couple of years?
Donald Trump took that stand, and Ted Cruz took that stand, and Sarah Palin took that stand because they saw the Pew poll that came out today that said 21% now, only 21%, 1 in 5 support this deal. I think what came out of today
So they're doing the politics of it, not the what's in the national interest.
I think it's both. I think it's both. But what's more interesting is that Trump and Cruz, the way they align, I think if you're looking for a running mate for Donald Trump if he gets a nomination, I think it's Ted Cruz, no doubt. Ted Cruz never criticized him anyway, and he's looking for a senator, somebody that's a politician without...
He'll get Texas anyhow, so it's going to go somebody where he can get some votes. Maybe. You can share your thoughts on the Iran deal by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up next, we're going to read some of those comments because it's that time of the show. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Let's read some of your viewer comments. First up, we have some comments from Kim Davis, or on Kim Davis, and it comes from Hank, who says, how is a ruling legal if enforcing that ruling requires violating the Constitution? To enforce this decision means that the Constitution will have to be violated. Therefore, their ruling should not stand. Rick, you're in total agreement.
That's the dumbest thing. Well, but we'll get to it in a minute. Here is a question from me. Scott asks, Rick, since marriage isn't addressed in the Constitution and has always been interpreted as a 10th Amendment issue, can the Supreme Court continue to rule something as constitutional where it isn't addressed in the Constitution? As in the case of marriage, can the Supreme Court essentially rewrite the Constitution with their rulings? A resounding yes. They can. That's why the Supreme Court was created by the founders. The judiciary is there to interpret law and make rulings. Nobody else can tell us. The Constitution does not list every possible thing that comes up. There are hundreds of SCOTUS cases every year that call upon them to interpret what was intended in the Constitution. You may not like the way that they interpreted this one. You may think they are totally wrong. Doesn't matter. The Supreme Court has ruled that when we don't allow same-sex marriage, that it violates the Constitution. Don't you agree, Noah?
What I find really remarkable here is that we're all really asserting the rights under the 14th Amendment of equal protection.
He's asserting them under the 10th.
Well, the 14th Amendment of the Equal Protection Clause is what justify the Obergefell decision, right? And so we're having a substantial problem on the right with the 14th Amendment because it justifies equal protection under the law, and it also justifies birthright citizenship. So the right has now really forced itself into this debate over the 14th Amendment, which is just about the basis of every anti-discrimination law we have in this country. It's the commercials write themselves. It's really sort of poor politics, even if you're just remotely familiar with how politics is played on a dirtier level.
And you know what the funny part is? You raise a great point, because I understand the rights argument on the birthright question. I don't know that I agree with it, but it's a logical argument. So what's going to happen? This will eventually be tested where? In front of the Supreme Court, who's going to have to do what? Interpret what was intended in the Constitution. And if it comes out the way you like it, you're going to go, well, of course the Supreme Court's there to interpret the Constitution. Besides, the word birthright's actually in the Constitution.
We asked you last night and tonight if Hillary could ever recover from her email scandal. Here is what some of you had to say about that. Kevin says, no, exclamation point. Hillary is finished when it comes to elected office. She may be appointed somewhere in the future. Appointed? What, to the Supreme Court? What are we talking about here?
I don't think to an IT position.
Probably not. You know, well, I said, they asked her, you know, well, do you think that your server was hacked? And she answered, what, with a machete?
And John says, if anyone but Hillary Clinton did what it appears she has done, they would have been indicted months ago. Key word there, appears. Guilty or not? Huh? I won't say she did it because I can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt myself, but she looks guilty. I wouldn't elect her to be a dog catcher with her track record with the truth, and you are absolutely entitled to that point of view, but you surely mixed things up there when you said she may not have done it, but she would have been found guilty months ago.
I hear that analogy a lot, by the way. Do we still elect dog catchers?
Yes.
Do you run for that?
In some places. In
really?
some places. Yeah.
Animal control officers.
Yeah.
Wow. But you run for that? You put up
Not
posters and
everywhere.
everything?
Hey, we elect mosquito abatement commissioners in
That's
some
true.
places.
You have too much money in your district.
I would think electric fences and everything would make the dog catcher kind of obsolete. I've never seen one before. Anyway, Mona says, I doubt if the Democrats care anything about what Hillary has done. It's kind of true. If she isn't indicted, they will vote for her, not Rick Unger. Why not? They will vote for anyone who supports killing babies. Hey now. They will support anyone no matter how immoral they are. To that point, 70% of Democrats still support Hillary Clinton, despite the fact they know she did something here very, not only wrong, but irresponsible and reckless.
Irresponsible, yes, I agree. But the comment was so offensive on so many levels, I don't even want to talk about it.
We didn't have to go to the debate.
71% support her because her only opponent right now that anybody knows is Bernie Sanders. The others are completely unknown, and Joe Biden isn't running yet. Anybody in that circumstance with her name ID would have 71%.
Right.
It's a vessel to power, but they don't necessarily support the candidate.
But the reality is it's probably going to end up that way. You're absolutely right.
Biden's running.
Maybe
Oh, he is.
Biden is running.
Maybe he is. I hope you're right. I'm a fan. Jason says Democrats pull the lever for candidates with D's after their names, whereas Republicans no longer seem bound by fealty to their party. I'm not even sure what a Republican is in this election cycle. There is a limit to the benefit of steering into a skid, and the GOP clown car has crossed the double yellow center line and is careening towards an oncoming, fully laden Freightliner in the form of straight ticket dumb voters. I love how that person writes.
Wow.
You're up, Joe.
It was like reading War and Peace, more or less. Well, anyway, that's your comments. Keep them coming. Remember, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here on the show, be sure to go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know what you think. And be sure to get your copy of Ben Carson's book, One Nation. Absolutely free. All you have to do is pay $4.95 to cover the cost for shipping. Call 1-800-655-7567, 1-800-655-7567, or visit newsmax.com/Ben. Yay or nay? That's next. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's time for Yay or Nay. First up, GOP frontrunner, his name is Donald Trump, wrote a letter to CNN president, that's Jeff Zucker, yesterday telling Mr. Zucker that CNN's ad rates have increased by 4,000%. Why? Because of him. He then went on to say that his presidential campaign is totally self-funded and that CNN should consider the second debate a public service and give all the profits to veterans charities. Will CNN do as Mr. Trump says, yay or nay?
Nay, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous on so many levels. They're up 4,000%.
But they're going to have egg all over their face and saying no. Oh, listen, he will. If they say no, he will, of course, up the pressure and have veterans groups start complaining.
Probably the art of the grandstand.
I don't think they will.
This is deft politics. The people who support Trump despise CNN. Love veterans. He got into a bit of hot water recently over this week when he said that he feels like he was in the military because he went to military education, so he's sort of covering up for that. This is really smart politics. It's emotionally manipulative, but it's smart politics.
You don't think he would actually drop out if Zucker decided not to?
He might mention it in the debate, though.
Yeah,
I probably would, right? Yeah, you could donate to Wounded Warriors Foundation, by
Unlike
the way.
CNN, which is keeping all the cash.
CNN should go commercial free.
Well, then wouldn't he have to do that with every single network?
He's willing to do.
He would have to do it with every network. Require every network to do it. Why just CNN?
He's flirted with having networks pay him for appearances.
Oh no, the next debate will be single moms.
Probably.
He'll move the target.
I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him demand that he be paid for a debate appearance.
That's the last debate.
That would make me happy.
Last night was the premiere of Late Night with Stephen Colbert. His second guest was none other than Jeb Bush, and Stephen had a very interesting question for him.
Your poster and your campaign poster is just Jeb with a J, E-B, and an exclamation mark.
Yeah.
Why the Jeb? Why?
Because I've been using Jeb since 1994.
Yes.
It connotes excitement. It connotes...
Jeb!
So Jeb Bush thinks his posters add a bit of excitement to his campaign, but fellow candidate Donald Trump does not. Take a look at this video Mr. Trump posted on Instagram just yesterday.
Having trouble sleeping at night? Too much energy? Need some low energy?
You may have an HSA in some companies don't. But I think the norm ought to be
Jeb, for all your sleeping needs.
As the campaign continues to get that much more ridiculous. Okay, the clip of the woman sleeping was from a campaign stop in New Hampshire last week. One of the big criticisms of the Bush campaign and Bush himself really is his low energy. Is it too late for Jeb Bush to do anything to invigorate his campaign beyond the Jeb slogan?
I thought, first of all, I thought Bush was as interesting as I've ever seen him on the show last night.
That was the goal, right?
That was the goal, and I think he did it. But you know what offends me? The woman who they showed sleeping was a woman who would work 2 shifts and still wanted to come and see Jeb Bush speak. And she fell asleep. She had been working for 16 hours straight on no sleep.
Do you think that somebody would have fallen asleep at a Trump rally?
Yeah. She might have.
Really?
But even if not, why is he making fun of this poor woman? She has to sit there and watch that.
I think he's making fun of Jeb Bush, not so much
but
the woman.
She's the one that he's showing.
True.
And that's baloney. That's not right. And if that's the only way he can score points, well.
Well, John, we know Rick doesn't like baloney. How about you?
Well, the genius of Donald Trump is he doesn't have consultants The downfall is he doesn't have consultants to double check those commercials and make sure he doesn't have a problem like that.
That's a good point. Noah?
I'm shocked that Rick is accusing Donald Trump of being unscrupulous. I find that to be just beyond the pale, and I cannot condone that kind of rhetoric.
Okay, finally tonight, Harvard professor Lawrence Lessig announced his candidacy for president yesterday, I believe, after reaching his fundraising goal of $1 million. He says he's running as a referendum president who wants to bring attention to the fact that government, the way it is now, is not working. The only issue he plans to focus on this campaign has been Citizen Equality Act, a bill that would expand voting access, limit congressional gerrymandering, and introducing citizen fund campaigns. Okay, John, jump in.
This campaign's going nowhere. This is a perfect example of the abuse of tenure in universities. It gives professors like this too much free time to make mischief.
Does he have your vote? Is
He's
a Democrat?
no, but he's going to make Jeb Bush look really exciting. Lessig's really boring.
True. Final word?
He's going to resign, so name his VP and make himself a little bit more popular.
Fascinating stuff. Anyway, that's all for tonight. Thank you, panel. We appreciate it. I'm Joe Concha on behalf of Rick Unger and the rest of the panel. Thanks for joining us tonight. The Steve Malzberg Show. That's next.